Were you at one time friends with Weev?
Friend is a strong word. I mean, the guy had been helpful to a lot of people, and he's definitely funny. Guy's talented. So you know, but it became obvious to me that Weev was a disreputable actor at some point, right? This whole thing about the guy called me a Fed snitch or whatever like that. I'll tell you about that part, right? So, like, again, I went down to Charlottesville as a professional entertainer planning on promoting a radio show. I said every step of the way, I'm like, I'm not doing anything unless the cops are involved. Okay. And so that's what I went to go tell the FBI, along with all the information that we had gathered about the communists who are attacking us in the streets. I had videos from this thing. The court barred me from publishing anything about my accusers publicly. And so if I wanted to do anything about this, I had to do it through the system. And so I went to the FBI and I told them everything I knew about the people who would frame me and about what happened down there. And I had this video of like a planning meeting that we had before the Torch March on Friday, August 11th. And like, everybody's acting like we went down there to go and terrorize vulnerable demographics, but they just couldn't have been further from the truth. And like earlier Friday, August 11th, like these people like falsely accused me of pulling a gun on them. I had a body camera on me. And so and when the police came, I was like, here, take my body camera. I didn't pull a gun on anybody. And the police said, well, we can't find our complainant anyway to let me go. Right. So I was scared. I'm like, these people are trying to frame me for a crime. And I wore my body camera around the rest of the time I was in Charlottesville. And one of the things I wore it to was this planning meeting that we had at this park. And, there were people like trying to like make it as if we had met at this planning meeting on how we were going to go kill these people. And like, it couldn't have been further from the truth. I had the video of it. So I'm like, yeah, here, FBI, here's the video of our planning meeting. It's completely innocuous. We're talking about how to avoid violence, what the self-defense laws are, how are we coordinating with law enforcement was exactly the content of the conversation. So I gave that to the FBI. I'm like, we're not the people you think we are. And so, that's what happened with that. And it's like, I don't know. What was your original question again? I'm sorry.
I think I was asking about Weev. What?
Weev.
Andrew?
I'm sorry. Yeah. So Weev says that we've got to excise Matt Parrott because Matt Parrott talks to the cops. I'm like, I talk to the cops too. I'm going to talk to the FBI soon, and that's why I was going to talk to the FBI. And Weev, that was a private conversation, and then he goes and he posts the details of that in public.
Oh, yeah.
And goes tells people that I'm snitching on the alt-right. Well, first of all, I'm not. And secondly, why are you giving the public? Because, people can criticize me for talking to the press. Does Weev think that when he posts something on the TRS forums, he's not telling the Huffington Post? It's ridiculous. So he's saying he's going to snitch. Everybody hide. Well, we're not a prison gang, psycho. You know what I mean? What am I snitching on? I didn't come down here to commit a crime. And if you did, I hope you get fucking caught, actually. I do. So, he goes out and he does this whole thing, and he's got people making death threats against me and stuff like this. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, what are you calling me a snitch for? I'm not involved in a criminal conspiracy. And so, like, he did this whole thing, and it was amazing to me, like, what he managed to stir up so fast. And I realized, it started to make me, he's in like the Ukraine or something like that. And there's people who have been like trying to like track down things about him. There's, things that have to do with Russia and stuff. And I'm like, let me find out that Mueller's onto something, right? Because I'm like, what is this a foreign intelligence agency screwing around with us? You got this, hacker IT genius in a foreign country who's, stirring up massive political discord in the United States. And so, I don't know what his routine is, but he's definitely a bad actor.
So Chris, who are the bad actors? I mean, you mentioned Weev. I mean, they're in the chat. They're talking about the redheaded guy that was on here, Beardson, one of those irony bros that was cursing at you, that he's some creation of Weev. I mean, is
that would make a lot of sense. And I think he would, like, as soon as he started talking, like Baked Alaska had asked me sometime, I don't know, a month or two ago, he asked me to come on some stream, and I'm like, okay. And I asked him, I'm like, is it hostile? And I thought I recognized that guy's face. And I was like, you one of those douchebags I had to hang up on before? And sure enough, he is. And so, yeah, I don't know anything about Beardson, but there's a bunch of people who are, in my estimation, it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts here, but like it becomes obvious to me that they're subversives at some point. If you have an ethnocentric movement and you're constantly posting jokes about boomers, that's stupid. If you're an ethnocentric movement and every time a girl comes into your chat room, you have to call her a whore, What are you doing? You want to have an ethnocentric, you want to have an ethno state, a bunch of guys standing around with their dicks in their hands waiting to die? It's stupid, right? You're gonna say, okay, Wignat, all you poor people, get the fuck out of our National Socialist movement. Get the fuck out of here. It's stupid. It's dishonest. It's obviously subversive. And so I don't know who all of these people are, and I don't pay a whole lot of attention to them. You know, I do my own thing. I read the Drudge Report and I watch Fox News, and I get on the radio and I talk shit. If people want to throw shekels at me, fantastic. You know, I'm not plugged into what everybody else is doing, so I don't know. But it became obvious to me that Weev's a bad actor. I got my suspicions of certain characters within TRS. I don't know who's who or who's doing what, but like, you know, it's obvious to me that some people wanted to get this thing as edgy as they could possibly get it, right? Because I mean, just think about this for a second, okay? Weev of all people, the whole Daily Stormer TRS outfit turns around and says, "Okay, guys, we got to work on our optics now." Okay, these are the fucking Nazi lulzers who fucking brought us to this point, right? Like when I started coming into this subject matter, I'm like, okay, race and IQ seems reasonable. All right, that's, you know, I definitely don't want all this immigration going on. And people are like, 1488, Hail Hitler. I'm like, wait a second. They're like, don't be a pussy. And I'm like, what? These people pushed me through all this stuff. And then they turn around and telling me that I've gone too far. It's a scam. It's obviously being done on purpose. And so, you know, I don't know exactly the equation to tell somebody to spot this on their own. But as I analyze the landscape and I see people doing shit that don't make no sense, stuff that's dangerous, yeah, that's where I determine it. Somebody's a bad actor.
So it seems to me that Hailgate was a massive self-inflicted wound. You had Mike Enoch leading a handful of people making Heil Hitler salutes at the NPI conference in 2016. Seemed like the beginning of a downward spiral for the alt-right.
I don't even know that, right? Because again, the thing is this: if you had just the thing is, you have to either do it and commit or not do it, right? So like, I think that it served an important purpose, that, you know, the Overton window thing. All right. That like, if people are saying that Donald Trump is a Nazi because he wants to build a wall across the southern border, it's like, no, I'll show you, Nazi asshole. Right. And then it's like, okay, Donald Trump doesn't look as much of an extremist there. Okay. And so like, I think that there's a really good reason to do stuff like that. But when the same people who did it then turn around and tell everybody who followed them into it that they're Wignats, well, what are you trying to do? Well, now you're obviously trying to divide and destroy things. You know, you wanted to get people so far out on the edges that they could not enter respectable circles. Then you pull everything back and you say, no, fuck you, you're bad. You know, so like, it's, you know, do it or don't. You know. But don't throw other people under the bus who followed you into a thing, and then you tell them that they're all bad actors because now you're gonna cuck. It doesn't make any sense. And then, you know, even with that, and it's like, even, you know, we even a Daily Stormer and Ricky Vaughn and these guys, it's not even like they toned anything down, right? They're all like, yeah, you guys are Wignats. They just decided who they were going to throw under the bus. It wasn't even like they improved their own optics. They're punching right and cucking, you know, in the same sentence. It didn't make any sense. They're punching right and doing Nazi stuff at the same time. It doesn't make any sense.
I have a theory that marginal people tend to be the ones who are attracted to marginalized political and religious movements, and that marginal people, by definition, are people who tend not to make good decisions and tend to have a hard time sustaining relationships. Would you say that a large proportion of the people attracted to a dissident movement, such as white nationalism, are people living on the edge?
I think I'd have to say that the people who show up, you know, the people who have their names on it, it certainly turns out to be the case. You know, I don't know that that's, but that's because you can't, the people who have shit to lose, they don't let anybody find out who they are. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people involved in this thing. You're never going to know who they are. And if everybody who listened to Radical Agenda was broke, I certainly wouldn't be able to do the show. Right. So, you know, anybody who's going to take the risks of having their name associated with this stuff probably got a screw loose to begin with. Right. And that's certainly the case for me. And so, you know, yeah, there's a lot of that. And the other component of it is this, you know, with the way the media paints us as we're the bad guys, you know, there are people who want to be bad guys who will get into it because of that, right? Now, in my case, I got into, I was already off on the fringes of the libertarian thing, but like, I got into the alt-right just specifically because I just couldn't avoid the truth of what they were saying, right? And so there's a lot of people who are involved in this, I imagine, who got into it in a similar way, who were not so off on the fringes as I was when I got into it. If you find out that, oh my God, our society is completely based around this complete and total lie that diversity is a strength, we have to do something about it. You got to imagine that there's some responsible people who get involved in that. But when you see what happens to the people who put their name on it, you're not surprised that they try to keep their identities a secret.
It seemed to me in 2016, up to Trump's election, that the alt-right was poised to become the dominant right-wing political movement in the United States. And then since Trump's election, the alt-rights seem to spiral into self-destruction and spend far more time attacking each other than attacking the enemy. Would you agree with this analysis? And what went wrong for the alt-right?
I would agree with the analysis for the most part, but I would alter it to say I don't think that this was done by the alt-right. I think that there were. I honestly think it's intelligence agencies, okay? Not just the United States. You'd have to be crazy to think the Israelis weren't interested in what we were doing, right? So, like I said, Weev is some part ethnically Jewish, and we don't know how much, and he lies about that, and anybody who mentions it on the Daily Stormer forums or the TRS forums gets banned instantly, right? So, you've got bad actors involved in this thing, and we don't know necessarily who they are. And I think that those bad actors in this thing saw what was happening with the alt-right, got involved, put themselves in position, managed to obtain positions of influence, and used that influence in a destructive fashion. Like I said, the Wignat thing is a class division. That's the whole point of it, okay? You're throwing the working class guys under the bus. Why? Because you're trying to destroy an ethnocentric movement. You can't have class, gender, and generational divisions in an ethnocentric movement. The only people who do that are smart people who want to destroy it. And that's what I think happened.
Is it primary maliciousness, do you think, that destroyed it, or was it self-destructive tendencies of many of the people in the alt-right?
I think those two factors complemented one another. Look, like I said, the people who end up with their face on this thing are people who can afford to do it. Right. And not because they've got so much money that it's not going to hurt them. It's because that they don't have much to lose. OK, so those people have flaws. Right. I mean, Matt Heimbach really did do a stupid thing in his family. Right. Richard Spencer really is going through a pretty ugly divorce, and who knows what the goddamn details are. Right. I do have a history of substance abuse, which is dramatically overrepresented by assholes like we had to hang up on today. But what happens is the people who are malicious actors, they seek those things out, right? And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised to find that the malicious actors help elevate the most problem people, right? I get nowhere in media-wise for years. I started getting into this, and then all of a sudden, I'm one of the most recognizable white nationalists in the world. Why? Well, because the media set out to make me that. Why? Well, probably because they figured I'm a pretty easy guy to destroy, right? And so I think that it's a combination of factors that, yeah, you've got troubled people who get involved in this thing, I among them, and then you have these bad actors who come in and exploit those weaknesses, at convenient, opportune moments.